I think we may have people already in the Zoom class. So if you are here, please send us a message. Let us know if you can see us. I'm just currently trying to set it up on YouTube Live also.
Yeah, bear with us here. We're doing this kind of this way for the first time, so
Okay.
but definitely you
Um,
can say hi in the chat if you are already here. Evelyn is here. Hey, Evelyn.
Evelyn. Okay, I think we're also now live on YouTube. I'm gonna check it on my phone.
Are we gonna be able to get questions from YouTube? Hmm.
Yes, if I
Oh, if you
in the
have it
chat
open in
function.
parallel, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. If you are also on YouTube right now, send a message into the chat. We'd love to see if you can hear us clearly.
What are you talking about, Evelyn? Nice hat. The one with the nice hat is, of course, me, right? The OTI hat.
Yeah, let us know in the chat if you can hear us and see us. It seems to be coming up on YouTube also,
Yeah. How
which
does
is
it?
good.
Ah, here. Okay, live Q&A. Hold on. But it's
Hey,
not.
Cheryl.
I'm not on YouTube. I don't see a live. It says waiting on online tennis instruction.
If you go onto the YouTube channel, it's
Ah,
on there.
there's two links now. This is the one that you
There's
like,
two.
the one you like pre-scheduled.
Yeah, yeah.
We gotta delete that one maybe.
Okay. Let me do that
Weird.
now.
And the one we have now doesn't have an image on it, just has our logo on it. Huh, interesting. Sorry, everybody. We're just getting used to it, but say hi, David. David Cheever. Good day. How are you doing?
Let me try to
Okay.
figure this out for a second. I'm gonna remove the other one.
It says two people alive watching on YouTube. We're breaking records, James.
Let me bring this up here. Yeah, the other thing also, which I've just noticed, is um the YouTube Live will have a delay on it.
It's waiting on. It will have a delay on it. Chris, hi all. Chris, Chris who? Mark Carlin. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, we got a few people in here.
Jason, this is Zoom. I don't
Bruce,
have
happy
you on
Halloween.
YouTube. Okay. Happy Halloween. Oh, it's Halloween. Yeah, forgot about that. Chris
Yeah.
Constantini. How are you doing, Chris? Uh, Chris has been around the OTI cosmos for quite a few years. Have you met Chris in person, James?
I think I have. I know the name. Put me on the spot now. There's a lot of Chris's I've worked with. So,
I
Chris,
think there's
apologies.
I think Chris is there's a testimonial of Chris on one of Greg's clinic sales pages, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah. We've got
Okay, all right.
Jason.
So, I think, James, you can keep an eye on things.
Yep,
People,
will
you
do.
can continue to say hi here as more people show up. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna share some learnings. We've been doing this new mentoring program for since May now, where players get a lot of feedback like once or twice a week on WhatsApp on their practice sessions. It's kind of like we're holding their hand to achieve these big breakthroughs. And it's been very, very interesting for us because we've never been this close with the players over a long period of time. And so we've learned quite a bit about, what does it take for somebody to really improve their technique? What holds players back and so forth. And so that's been very, very interesting. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the beginning. And then we're gonna take some questions with hopefully more people showing up. Looks like our strategy of sending out the email an hour before probably wasn't the best, James. We probably should have
Yeah,
sent it out like 10 minutes before. But
yeah.
anyways, that's even better for those of you that are here, so we can answer all of your questions. Yeah, so James, you wanna kick it off maybe in mentoring program? We've been running it now since what, 4 or 5 months. What's been a big learning for you?
Well, one of the things that I always like to do is try to relate it to my own experience as a player, because obviously I've been through a lot of these steps myself, working on my serve and my strokes. And one of the big things I learned is, back in the day when I was doing this, like 10 years ago now, when I was working on my serve, I worked with Florian in the clinic, and then after that, I was just by myself on the court, and I was just out there by myself, just hitting serves. Really had no structure, no plan, no idea. All I had in my head was what the perfect serve should look like, and then I would just constantly try to replicate that, and I'd work with that. And one of the big things in this mentoring program now that I've seen a lot of is, with that constant video feedback that the players get, and this is also, if you're watching this and you want to utilize something yourself, always constantly self-analyze. Being able to constantly self-analyze and see yourself on video, and then also getting objective feedback like you do in the mentoring program, it just fast tracks everything. And I was thinking about this myself. I was like, what if I had this program when I was a player, 10 years ago, when I was working on my strokes? Like, how much quicker would I have got it? It took me a long time in those winter, rainy days. I was by myself, getting really pissed off. Yeah, yeah. I could just imagine the fast track in terms
Yeah,
of having
it
that
really
constant feedback.
it really is a fast track. It's also a fast track for us to learn even more about the players and how we can help them. So one big thing I noticed is that players, especially obviously we attract that, but players do get stuck in their world of perfectionism a little bit. So and this can happen to us as well, right? So we'll have a player who has, let's say we call it, we now have levels for the racket drop, like level 1 to level 5 on the racket drop on the serve. Level 5 is like a pro level racket drop. Level 1 is like kind of like a pancake serve, really kind of beginner type serve. And so I think it's very easy when you look at the videos and we do the side by side comparisons with, I often use James's serve because he's got a great serve. And so it's very easy to get obsessed with achieving the perfect positions. But we then forget, and what I also forgot is, if you don't let players, if players don't try it out, like from the baseline after a little while, you've improved it from level 2 to level 3, right? So you've improved it by this much, and that's very significant. But players will get obsessed and why is it not the way it's on a shadow swing? Especially I hear that a lot. Why is it not the same way it's on a shadow swing? It cannot be the same way it is on a shadow swing. Your brain will not allow that yet. Okay, if you're on a level 2 racket drop, starting and in a shadow swing, you can do a level 5, like a pro level racket drop. Almost anybody can after a while. But that doesn't mean that there's any time soon you can do that. Your goal should be to go from a level 2 racket drop to a level 3 racket drop. And one thing we realized was we had one or two players who were a little bit frustrated with this. And then I said, let's get you to the baseline now. And this was like maybe 6 weeks into the program, right? They've done a lot of reps and no hitting in matches from the baseline. I said, let's get you from the baseline. What happened? They hit from the baseline. They're like, wow, I'm hitting with 10, 20% more power than I was 6 weeks ago. I'm hitting with significantly more power. And then I look at the video and the racket drop has improved this much. It's like gone from level 2 to level, even maybe even just 2.5 or 3. But that already makes such a big difference in terms of the speed and the result. So not getting stuck in this perfectionism cycle, I think is really, really important. And having those, those mini process goals, we talked about that when we announced this program. Your goal is to go from a level 2 when you're hitting to a level 3. And if you start at level 3, your goal is to go to maybe 3.5 and then 4. And that's just how it works. Your brain does not allow bigger changes, within just a couple of weeks. So yeah, that was a big learning for me that we really need to put the emphasis on from the start what the goal is. You're on a level 2 racket drop. Your goal is to get to a level 3 racket drop and hit with a level 3 racket drop in a match. Your goal is not to get to that perfect level 5 racket drop that you see James doing on the video comparison.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that also, I think it leads into another thing which I was thinking about is, you know, what players think they're doing to what they're actually doing. And we spoke about this a lot on calls, on videos, and we will tell players to, let's talk about the depth of the racket drop, trying to get the tip of the racket and the hand lower into the drop. You will tell the player, okay, you really got to exaggerate the feeling. And then they'll send you a video and it looks exactly the same, when they add the ball. And to them, it feels like they're exaggerating. But, the amount you've got to really exaggerate is something which we're not used to. And again, I relate this to my experience when I was learning the serve. I remember, doing my first clinic with Florian, and he was putting me into this racket drop position because I had no racket drop before. And I remember at the time thinking, this feels completely weird. This is, pro level players can't serve like this. It don't feel right. But then when I went back and I was working on it, I would really, the amount of exaggerated effort I would put into it, I would hit one and it'd feel like I'm exaggerating. And then I would test myself. I'd say, okay, on the next one, I'm going to double the exaggeration. Wherever I just did there, I'm going to double it. And then you slowly start to see these incremental movements come in. Now, obviously, people watching, if you are dealing with shoulder injuries or anything like that, you've got to proceed with caution with that if you're exaggerating. But that's a key element. In order to make a minimal change, it's got to feel like a big change to you. And, so many players forget that, I think.
Yeah, that's why we call it the crazy correction technique, right? The correction has to feel absolutely crazy to you. And then you look at the video and then the racket drop has changed this much. And it feels crazy to you because your brain just resists that change. Your brain is so obsessed with getting that ball in that service box, right? So absolutely crazy correction is really something I use a lot in this program. And so for example, I had a player who was always tossing to the right, right? And I said, on the next video you send me, I want to see you consistently toss too far to the left. That is your goal. It's not where I want that player to end up, but I want you to send me a video where you consistently toss too far to the left. Show me that you can do that. Okay. And then the player is forced to exaggerate that correction. And then it started to work. So that's just one example that just came to mind there.
Yeah, on that too, the interesting experience I find with players too is, let's say, for example, again on the serve, they may be working on increasing the loop so you get more of a loop into the drop. They'll send a video and they'll say, the first one, it didn't feel right. It broke down, result broke down a little bit, the first one, but then the others felt better. Interestingly, the first one was the best one because what they did, they actually changed the motor program, which changed the rhythm of everything. They're not used to it now with their usual ball toss. And then initially, because their first time doing it, the result did break down a little bit. But that's the one we're looking for. And then over time, we just reinforce that until the results start to click into place, which it will over time. But that's another, we're so wired to be focused on the result, not on what's going on here, that also holds you back a lot, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that comes to mind is really focusing on one thing at a time. A lot of players think and want to work on three, four, five elements at the same time. It's a recipe for disaster, right? Actually, I have one thing comes to mind. Yesterday, I got a message. So we have this lady who had, disastrous toss mechanics. It was just everything was off. It was really, really bad, lady in the program. And so, and the arm mechanics were decent. And so we said, okay, we gotta fix that toss first. Okay. And that was a tough one, but now we've got it fixed. It took a little while. We ended up like designing a training aid to help her keep the arm more straight. It was kind of, like she designed it off of the input that we gave her. And so, the toss is now really, really good. I saw the video. And now she didn't complete the racket drop. And I told her that in the review, or Gunther told her that in the review. And then she said, yeah, I've been saying for a while that I don't have enough time to complete the racket drop. And I said, well, there was no time to even address this. Like we had to just fix your toss first. Now your toss is good. Now we can move on. And I'm giving you the adjustments so that you can now she's tossing a little bit higher. She's speeding up the swing a little bit so that she can get into that racket drop. She has enough time, right? But if I had given that to her earlier, the toss would not have been fixed. And that's what I found in the mentoring program is just so advantageous. We can keep players on track where when you're left on alone, it's so easy to just constantly switch the focus. I work on this a little bit, work on that a little bit, work on that a little bit. And yeah, so that's a big one that I've realized.
the other one too is, again, learn from the experiences working with the players the last couple of months, but it also learn from my own experiences. I was going back. I've got all footage documented from when I was working on my game all these years, and when I was younger, only 14, starting on this, I really didn't have a good perspective on how to work on technique and how to best manage it, all these different things. So I was curious, how did I still achieve such a great transformation with my serve before and after? And one of the elements which I always did do, even from those days, is the discipline to go through the micro progressions. Meaning, you may give a player a change, you may be working on the forehand or the serve, whatever it may be. You get the information of which you now want to go out and try and test. And what do we always do? We do two things. We either go straight back to the baseline. So for the serve, you just go back to the baseline, hitting the ball into the service box. Groundy, same thing. Go to the baseline, hitting the live ball rally. The other thing we do is we hit ball after ball in succession with no real focus on the quality of what we're trying to do. And one of the elements I saw consistently in all the videos when I was training is I would always do, in between each shot, I would do two shadow swings, going, one going slow and another one just speeding it up, really just feeling exactly what I need to do. And also, a lot of these videos, I wasn't anywhere near the baseline. 50% of them, I was half court position, serving down the line, but I would diligently go through that. I wouldn't just hit ball after ball after ball. I would always break it down and focus on the quality of the repetition I'm doing. That was a big element, I think, for me.
Yeah, you were really compliant, as they would say in like medical terms. You were
Yeah, yeah,
you were following the prescription, so to speak.
yeah, exactly.
Not everybody's that compliant.
No, no, they're not.
Um, yeah, so which is human nature. So another one that comes to mind is once we introduce the live ball on a ground stroke, right? So we're working on a forehand or a backhand, we're making technical changes. The player is hitting the ball much better. And now it's time to go from more controlled situation to live ball. At that moment, we have to introduce a focus on movement again, because you have been working from a stationary position a lot or with a very minimal movement. You're focused on your arm a lot or your body, whatever you're fixing, but you're not really focused on moving to the ball. And so once we introduce the live ball, really you have to switch the focus a little bit. And I often like to then do a 50-50 focus. I say, now for 50% of the time, you really just focus on movement. Keep your feet active in between shots, getting in position early. And then we will see what happens if your new technique shows up or not, right? That you have been working on a more stationary. And then once your movement is good, then you spend 50% of your time where you focus more on the new technique, bringing the hand on the inside or whatever you've been working on. And then you kind of, you do a 50-50 switch throughout your practice sessions. But what we've seen otherwise is like players are hitting the ball incredible from that stationary position. The moment the live ball comes into play, if you're still too focused on the mechanics and your feet are not moving, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And then you're going to get frustrated. So that in the beginning, it's all technique. And then once the live ball comes in, now we got to really look at how you're moving. Are you on your toes? Are you reacting quickly to the ball? So we're really, and to me, always, technique and movement are the two cornerstones of this game that will determine, how good you are as a player. And so we've really focused on, we've really included movement now a lot. In the beginning, so when we started these groups in May, and then we started another group in July, in the beginning, it was on the ground strokes, it was really more stationary technique. And now a lot of the players were talking a lot more about movement and less about the technique on the ground strokes because they have managed to develop much better technique. So that back and forth was very important as well.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Is it also goes back to your first point about chasing perfection. And that is, players, they may improve their strokes, by 30, 40%. There may be some significant improvements there. And then, the objective I try to tell them is we take now the improvements you've got and we try to replicate this now where you can rely on it when you are playing matches. So we have at least you have a stroke which you can rely on and use. Otherwise, if you're constantly in this technical mode where you're just constantly trying to work on it, you go into a match play and you try to replicate it and it all comes tumbling down. So yeah, I think that's a good point. That's good.
Yeah, that's the training blocks principle, right? That we talked about a lot leading up to this. You want to look at it in training blocks. So you spent, let's say, 6, 8 weeks really zoning in on the technique, very focused on the technique. Now you're making a transition for the next 4, 6 weeks. You're like half focused on the technique and half focused on the movement, transition more into live play. And then after that comes the phase where you really start point play and so forth. So you really split it up into these phases. And the goal is always to get to the point where you do it automatically and you don't have to think about it anymore. Players forget that. We don't want you in an endless cycle of continuing to tweak the technique over and over and over. We want to get you where you can play in matches. And then at a later point, again, we look at it and we say, okay, now we can tweak this a little bit more. A new training block, right? So training blocks principle, very, very important part there as well. I've got one more on the serve. One more realization was that, we always start working on the first serve, right? And that makes sense because um, first of all, it's better for your arm and everything. If you're doing a lot of serves, the second serve with the toss for the left can be a little bit harder on the shoulder and everything. But also, if you develop really good fundamentals on the first serve, the adjustment to the second serve is going to be relatively easy. Once you've got a good right to left, a fluid motion, yada, 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 all that stuff, then the adjustment for the second serve over and over has proven to be relatively easy. The one thing I did change now, though, is I have started introducing the focus on the second serve a little bit earlier because what happens sometimes, those players were developing really good technique on their first serve, and then they will go out and play matches, right? After, I mean, some people in the mentoring program will keep them out of matches for maybe the first 4 weeks or so, or they are willing to do that, and we communicate with them on that. But that should not be endless. Like we want you to get back into your regular games. And what happened is they have good technique, but they only really have a first serve, and they're making too many double faults. And all of a sudden, you've developed this good technique, and you're double faulting a lot, and that can be really frustrating, right? And kill your motivation. So one other thing we realized was, hey, let's bring in the second serve a little bit sooner, the moment players can focus on that, so that you have a reliable second serve when you go back into your regular games, and you don't end up being the guy or girl that double faults all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Good.
Yeah, how was that on your journey with the serve? Do you remember that, or is it too long ago?
Too long ago. Um, there's certain elements I remember. One of the big elements I do remember is working on that technique for so long that, you try to take it then into match play and, working on technique in a very controlled environment on the court by yourself to then going into a tournament play is completely different. Like the scenarios are so different. It's hard to comprehend. And I remember that experience being so frustrating, that transition, that I'm like, I've worked now for months on this, and then I go into the match play and it's just not there. And then, obviously at the time I didn't realize that I had to, build this technique also under pressure. And I had to build this up step by step. I was just training in a very isolated progression level.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that was one
Part
of
of
the things I
that, part of
remember
that
being
was
like,
you didn't have a lot of practice partners either, right? Locally,
exactly.
you didn't have the chance to play practice matches. We did
Yeah,
recommend it, just didn't have the chance, and so you were
exactly.
practicing a lot by yourself. And then, so you gotta, this brings me back to the mini process goals, right? So you're always just trying to move up one little step in the ladder of the process goal. So for you, so you were able to hit good serves back then while practicing by yourself, really good serves, right? From the basket serving, really good. Okay. Now there is a tournament match play. There's a lot of mini process goals that you can have in between. Okay. So basically, okay, I was able to hit really good serves while I'm serving from the bucket. Now I can play some points with a friend without counting score. Literally, or I can
Yeah.
play with a weaker player or a much stronger player where there's very little pressure. So I can create that that's my next goal, to be able to execute that same serve there, right? And
Yes.
then when that works well, then you ask your friend, you say, you know what? Let's play some points, or let's play two service games each, right? It's not a
Mhm.
set. It's less pressure. Let's play two service games each, and your goal is to execute that new serve well, just playing two service games. And then you ask your friend, all right, when that works well, all right, let's play a set this time. Okay, so you play a set. Now it counts a little bit more. And then you play a
Yeah.
match, and then maybe you play a practice match against somebody who's where there's more pressure for you for whatever reason, right? Somebody at your age or, things like that. So when I work with this 13-year-old boy that I'm working with who's really, really good, and he plays a practice match against an adult, there's not a lot of pressure, you know? Who cares if he loses? But when he plays against somebody his age, he really doesn't want to lose. It's a totally different pressure level. So you gotta
Yeah.
like always these mini process goals, like think of these mini steps on top. So yeah, we're going to do some Q&A. We are accepting a few players into the mentoring program this week. So if anybody is interested, James, you can post the link in the chat. If anybody's interested in joining us in that program, we are accepting up to 5 players. 2 have signed up, so we got 3 spots open this week. And you can also start now, and then in December, you can take a break for a couple of weeks, and we'll just add that on at the end. We know that obviously the holidays are coming up and so forth. But the best time to start with a project like this, improving your stroke, is always today. There's never, in my opinion, when you really want to change something, the best time to start is always today. So yeah, the questions. Is there any questions already, James? Please feel free to post questions. I saw some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, there's one clarification right away from David. He's saying, I think OTI used to coach stand up at contact, but now it seems to be stand up and then hit on the ground strokes. Am I wrong? He said. So,
Do you
you
understand
know,
that?
yeah, I think I understand what he means. Just to clarify, what I can clarify is how the body works on the ground strokes. You want to hit the ball with the body. You don't want to be arm independent. This is what most players do. They just swing with the arm. So what we've taught up until now is you want to engage the ground force. And the way we teach that to keep it simple, going back to teachings by Vic Braden, you want to sit down and stand up as you hit. So as your racket and hand is going down into the slot position, it will coincide with the lower body coiling. So you're sitting down. And then as your hand begins to move forward up to contact, you're then standing back up. You're transferring the weight forward and upward into the shot. So David, if you look at this in slow motion, ideally this is when the racket has reached contact, the body should be nearly fully uncoiled at that point. Most players make the mistake of, even when they are working on the uncoiling of the body, they will strike the ball, and then after they hit the ball, they then stand up. And now you haven't transferred that energy into the strike. You've missed it a little bit there. So I hope that answers your question there, David, on how the body works. Let me see if there's any other ones here.
I think Mark
Been
had a
crazy.
comment earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna go up to Mark. On serves, backside hit produced the best motion for me. Seemed crazy, but the training technique produced better swing path than a serve that feels correct. I have to rewire my brain to what feels correct, Mark said.
Yeah, what he means is hitting with the wrong side of the racket. So we've been doing a drill where you hit with the wrong side of the racket to keep the helps to keep the racket face closed. You just tap the ball with the wrong side of the racket a couple of times, and that really helps you keep the palm down and keep the racket face closed. And then you do wrong side, and then on the last one you go right side. So you do 2 with the wrong side, and then 1 with the right side of the racket. And that's really a very, very effective drill to keep it more closed. And it is a rewiring of the brain. Your brain is telling you this is not correct, right? Because it's so different, it's so awkward. But that again brings us back to the crazy correction technique. So after a while, you just realize, hey, this is so much better. There's more pop on the serve, and then that becomes normal. So yeah.
There's
Please
a
don't be shy. Post your questions in the chat, guys.
there's another comment here again from Mark. He says, I'm recording my hits and have noticed that my feeds are right on, but then I break down as I play. I'm now telling myself to hit everything as a feed. It works well, but not obviously on the run. When he's got to move, it breaks down.
Sorry, I was
Jason, I'm
reading.
so
I was
happy.
reading the comments here. Can you go? Oh, that was just a comment. It wasn't a question.
Yeah, that was a comment. I also got another comment through YouTube here saying, I really appreciate your analysis and your videos. I find that when you say most recreational players make this mistake, that is me. It really helps me understand the need to change. Excellent. It's good.
Okay, I see there. What is the best second serve to learn? That's a great question, actually. So what we found is, Greg came up with this. It's called a workman-like serve, and we found that that's usually the best option for club players. So what is that? It's basically a mix of a kick and a slice. So, you've got your first serve, you're contacting above the shoulder, and a kick serve above the right shoulder, kick serve, you would contact above your head, right? And the kick serve is a very effective second serve, but it is also not great for your shoulder. It really is. I can't even like I've had shoulder problems for years, and I can't even hit a real kick serve anymore. I can hit it, but it's just doesn't feel good because the further you go over to the left, the more impingement you get in the shoulder here, the closer it gets in the shoulder, less space there is. And so the workman-like serve, you move from the first serve contact point, you just move it a little bit to the left, not as far as on the kick serve. You move it a little bit to the left and a little bit back. And what happens is you end up hitting kind of a mix of a kick and a slice. And if you're hitting that from the deuce court, it will usually you can hit that to the middle of the box and it will jump up a little bit and curve into the body a little bit. And so it's safe. It's got a lot more margin. It's higher over the net. And we found it to be very effective. It's easier on the shoulder. Now, the way to get there usually is so you go from that first serve. I let players do some kick serve drills because the kick serve motion is the hardest to learn. And so I let them do a little bit of kick serve drills. And then oftentimes, naturally, they end up at that when they then try to second serve at that workman-like serve because it's so hard to go real kick left to right. So I let them kick serve a little bit, the drills, to create that element, and then we meet in the middle, and then it ends up being that workman-like serve. So that's been something that's worked really well. I don't know, James, if you got any more input on that.
Yeah, to be honest, that's what I was just about to say is that workman-like serve that Greg suggests. It's a great one because I felt this myself when I was working on the kick serve recently. I don't feel as much because I'm young, but I can see the amount of pressure this was put on your body. Trying to hit a true kick serve. So that subtle adjustment for the workman-like is a great one. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve is saying, any suggestions on going through the process of improving your technique, but having a USTA team that wants you in the lineup every week?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? This depends a little bit on where you're at with your stroke. So what you could do, if you're interested in working with us in general, you could send us a video to have a look at it. Depends a lot on how big of a change is necessary. So if you're playing in the lineup every week and a rebuild of a stroke is probably not something you'd want to do. You'd want to wait a little bit for the off season, basically. Now, there is one option that a lot of players have used with us in the mentoring program, where on the serve, you actually serve underhand for a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and you'll be surprised how effective that can be because the rebuild is usually the players where the serve is no good anyways. So the overhead serve, if you have a rebuild project, then that means your serve is no good anyways. So then you can just serve underhanded and continue to play have no problem continuing to play in your regular games. And then you continue on working and developing that new one on the side. If your serve is decent and you just want to fine tune it, then you can let us know if you work with us, for example, that this is my schedule. Like this is what we do with everybody in the mentoring program. We ask them what their schedule is. Do you have matches? When do you have matches? Some people have the next matches in 4 weeks, and then we know exactly we got to work towards that. Some people have matches every week, and then we work with that, and we adjust the changes. So basically, small technical tweaks. You just got to get the right input can be done. I do this all the time with pro players, like and high performance players. They will have tournaments all the time, but we still tweak the technique, a little thing that can make a significant difference. A rebuild, if it's a serve, then you can serve underhanded for a while, and grip changes on the ground strokes. There's ways to work around that as well. So yeah, but that would be my feedback on that.
Jeff is saying you touched on this, but any tips for actually making the transition from ball machine to match play? Um, I hit a 4-5 on the ball machine, but after several months of match play, I hit far more 3-5 forehands than 4-5 forehands.
Yeah, so it's all about these mini in-between progressions. So you don't go from ball machine to playing matches. You go from ball machine to live ball rallying with a practice partner. A little bit more controlled, cross court, down the line, down the middle. And then from there, you go to maybe playing some points without counting score, where there's not a lot of pressure. And so you're always moving between these little progressions and mini process calls back and forth. James, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, if we're talking specifically on the forehand, it breaks down in match play. One of the big things is then, Florian touched on this in the beginning, learning to move. We practice so long from a stationary position hitting the forehand that as soon as you just add a little bit of movement, it breaks down because obviously in a match play, you're not going to get that same ball every time. The ball is going to vary a lot. So you've just got to learn to still move and execute the technique. And, just learning that some basic movement principles. And, we have YouTube videos for this. You can go on YouTube and we have a lot of videos there. And just learning some basic movement principles and to activate your feet, that will quickly start to increase the quality of your shots if you've been working on it a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point. That definitely goes together. Yeah.
There's another one here from David. He says, there seems to be two theories of power generation in tennis strokes from the ground up and forward versus rotation. Which one do you subscribe to at OTI?
We don't subscribe to any of those. It's a power is generated in the sequence of coiling and uncoiling the body segments in the correct way. And if you lack power, then we look at why do you lack power? Which body elements are not working properly, are not coiling and uncoiling properly. So there is no theory there that we subscribe to, one of the two.
Chris is asking, when I practice serves, I end up finding a few points to concentrate on. Straight toss, arm stay closed. Do you suggest a few aspects to think about before the service? I'm assuming he means in match play here.
Yeah, so in match play, you can have minimal technical cues. So, for example, if the toss is always your problem and keeping the tossing arm straight helps you, then that's fine to have that in a transitionary period until it becomes fully automatic. So, in the beginning, you're really focused on that during practice, arm straight, arm straight. Now you're starting to play matches, and you can have this slight focus on just keeping the arm straight, and that's perfectly fine. And then in the next phase or training block, or you should get to the real match phase when this has become automatic, then you think more about where do I want to hit the serve? What patterns of play favor me, right? Where do I hit the serve so that I get the return to my forehand, for example, if I have a strong forehand, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of my opponent, and so forth. So it depends on what phase you're in. So that's really how we look at that.
Jason is a good one. I'm happy with my progress for an old man. He's 70. But when I play singles against younger players, I get killed because I can't cover enough of the court. Additionally, I often find I get stuck a few yards from the baseline after a good serve, and the returner smacks it back at my feet. Any strategic suggestions here?
Hmm. Well, we can't make it younger. We haven't figured that one out yet. No, I'm just kidding. So can you scroll? Hold on, I gotta see that again. So basically, to make up for being slower on the court, you can make up for that with better technique, right? I used to work for a coach many years ago. His name was Steve Smith, or is Steve Smith, and he had a son, Connor Smith, and Connor was slow, not compared to the athletes on tour, those guys that you see on TV, not the best athlete in the world. Similar to me, I was also not a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers. But Connor, having a dad who really knew about technique, had excellent technique on the serve, the forehand, and the backhand, and the volleys. And he made it all the way up to 200 in the world because of that great technique. Now, If you're slow, there's a limit there. So, but you can make up. Definitely a good way to make up for being slower than the other player is with great technique. And the great technique will give you tactical options or strategic options. It's hard to, if you have a bad serve, a bad forehand, and a bad backhand, and you can't move very well, there is no strategy that's gonna make up for that, right? You got to have the tools, and that's the technique. So work on the technique, develop the tools, and then you can take balls early, come into the net, dictate the point. Whoever dictates the point does not have to move nearly as much, right? So most likely the best path is to develop better technique to give you more tactical options.
Bruce is asking, with your new mentoring format, did students have any different learning insights from this program versus other teaching methods?
You mean other teaching methods of ours or like from the
I,
outside, from other
I think he
people?
means from the outside. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't asked them, honestly. I don't really ask players what they do outside of the training that we do with them. So I don't really know. But I think definitely, I think definitely that, first of all, the success rate in the mentoring program is just unbelievable. It's very close to 100%. If it's not 100%, we can actually measure it. That comes with a guarantee, where if after 3 months you have not improved significantly, I continue to coach you free of charge. And so we've had about 60 players go through the mentoring program, and one player has taken advantage of the guarantee. And I coached that player for 1 additional month, and then after 4 months, he was happy with his improvement. So the success rate is really, really high. So I'm sure the players are, learning a lot and having a lot of insights. Now, I don't really, you know, ask them too much about it. I just focus on making them better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything you think of, James, there?
No, there's same experience with you. I don't really ask them about any
Or?
outsiders.
Maybe James, maybe you can post the link again in case anybody is interested in joining the mentoring program. Yeah, and
Okay.
we'll keep going with a couple questions.
The Chris is just saying it looks like it's just a comment here for the serve. The left shoulder goes up a bit with the toss. The right shoulder drops a bit, but then his right elbow seems to drop too much. So when his shoulders tilt, the elbow dips
Mhm.
in, I think he's saying.
Yeah, I actually did a video review for Gorchan the other day. It was very similar. It's if you are if you arch too much, like a lot of players think they have to look like a bow, right? If the hips go out too much in front, the elbow can drop a lot. So that can have something to do with that when you're trying to do too much of that. You don't need that much of that. But other than that, you're dropping the elbow. So you're probably starting here and then, so what you want to do again, we call it the crazy correction technique. As you're swinging, focus on bringing your elbow up. It has to feel to you like you're bringing your elbow up. Like I would say, okay, show me a serve where your elbow is too high. Show me that you can do a serve with your elbow too high, and you're probably not going to be able to do it. But then you will have corrected it, and by whatever amount is necessary. So crazy correction, I would recommend there. But also look at if you're pushing your hips out too much forward, and you're creating this massive like body posture that looks like a bow, then that can lead to the elbow dropping.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Jeremy is saying, after completing the right to left, I find I have a lot of stored energy that I can release, and the racket slings upwards, and I can pronate at the end. However, the racket doesn't explicitly lead on edge. It more leads diagonally into the ball, and then I pronate. The other option I find is to really lead with my pinky edge. This leads to more of a loop with my hand and elbow leading, but less power. It's subtle, but I noticed this potential power change after watching one of Greg's video on throwing the ball in the more serve power course.
Yeah, coming up on edge is not if you've got a good right to left and a fluid motion and you're coming up, not fully on edge, but a little bit more like this, it's actually not that big of a deal in terms of power. Like a supination, pronation, I don't know, it's like 4% of serve power or something. It's not a huge amount. So might not be as big of a problem as you think, you know. So if your serve is good, powerful anyways, you know, might not be even worth being so obsessed about that. Now, supination, pronation does become more important when you try to vary serve locations, you know, off of the same toss. Um, Also on the kick serve. A way to deal with it, you know, or to focus, you want to maximize the supination, right? So if you can see this, my thumb, you really bring it out this way. Okay, so you extreme supination, you know, before you come up. So this part here, it's the opposite of pronation. So if you're coming up open, it's a little bit like this, and then extreme supination. It's almost like you want to point the thumb to the wall, to the side, you know, like you just extreme supination can help there. But it might not be that big of a problem, honestly, for you. You know, it depends on obviously we always, you know, we look for improving the flight of the ball flight oriented tennis teaching. We want to, you know, what is your ball not doing that you want it to do, or what is your ball doing that you don't want it to do? So what is it not doing that you want it to do? It doesn't have enough power, maybe. Okay, then we look for power sources, right? If you lack power, supination, pronation, it can add power, but it's not the biggest source in the world. So that's how we look at these things. And then what is the ball doing that you don't want it to do? So let's say it's always going in the net, right? So then we go backwards in the chain and we look at what is happening at contact that makes the ball go in the net. And then we go back and we look at what is the body doing before contact and what is the racket doing before contact so that the ball goes in the net. And then we look at which element can we tweak so that the ball no longer goes in the net. So it's really depends a little. That's why, you know, what we've found over the years is personalized video feedback coaching is just the only real option for online coaching. Generic videos, they can help. They can definitely help. And you know, we get comments on YouTube all the time. You know, I've improved a lot, but to really increase the percentage of players that improve, we had to move to all of our programs now come with personalized video feedback where you send us in your video and we give you the personalized feedback. It's just, you know, that's just the best way to help anybody.
Okay, let's go on to the final question here from Chrissy, just asking clarification. If pronation is a small power source, what are the main sources of power on the serve?
Yeah, the most important one is external to internal shoulder rotation, right here, external to internal shoulder rotation. And that is very related to the racket drop, right? So if I get my hand low here and my shoulder is very externally rotated, the tip of the racket will be quite low. And so it will be, let's say, you know, waist level. Or even like on the pros, you'll see it even like it'll go, the tip of the racket will be down by the thigh somewhere, you know, like or on the hamstring in this case, on the backside of the leg. So external to internal shoulder rotation, that's the big one that you want to improve. And that's where the right to left is so important. If you come in with the racket face closed into the racket drop and like this, and the hand relatively close to the head, kind of pointing this way, and the racket is an extension of that, now I'm coming in at a really nice angle that allows me to maximize that external shoulder rotation. If I come in with the open racket face and my hand is all the way back here, you can try this when you're watching right now. Try to move from there right to left and into a low racket drop. It just doesn't really work. It's constricted, right? That's why this right to left closed racket face is so important. It's all about the angle that you come in on into the racket drop to maximize external internal shoulder rotation. That's also why, like, I can stand just behind the net, literally not move a single thing in my body, and you give me an overhead, and I can just do this, and I can hit it over the back fence. I'm literally just doing external internal shoulder rotation, you know, and I'm kind of isolating that and taking all the other elements out, and I can easily hit the overhead over the back fence because I know how to maximize external internal shoulder rotation. So that's the big one that you want to optimize for.
Yep. Okay. Well, I just want to say also, let me look at YouTube real quick too. Yeah, we've got two
Got a
things there. I
whopping
just want to say
seven
six
people on
people.
YouTube Live, huh?
That's good.
No, it's down. It's down to five, James.
Oh, it's
We
down to
we
five.
got
Okay.
we gotta optimize our YouTube Live strategy because we do have about 150,000 subscribers, and we've got
Yeah.
a whopping 7 people live today. I think we can do better with planning this whole thing, James. It's
Yeah.
not criticizing you. I was just as much involved. We're learning.
Yeah. David, I've just posted the link to the mentorship program in the chat. I'm posting it one more time for everyone. You can get that right there. Please
Yeah.
click on that
And if
link.
anybody has any great tips for improving this YouTube live strategy, let us know. Hey, we can only
And
improve from here, James.
yeah,
You know, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard
that's good.
to go down in numbers.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, a big thank you to everyone watching today. And yeah, we look